Hello everybody, I'm Dan. Welcome to my Java tutorial series. Throughout my tutorials I will teach you Java using just Notepad and the command prompt. The order in which my tutorials are organized on both my website at javacjava.com and my YouTube playlist is designed to maximize learning by building on concepts from prior tutorials. This tutorial I'm going to discuss the compareTo method. In addition to that, I'm going to demonstrate the overloaded toString method and the divideAndRemainder method. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our web browsers to my website, javacjava.com, select Java Tutorials, and we'll scroll all the way down here to the BigInteger compareTo tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to discuss the compareTo method. Now, the basic comparison operators, double equals, greater than, and less than, do not work with big integer objects. That is where the compareTo method comes in. Okay, so the compareTo method basically works like this. You'll be invoking this on a big integer object. You'll be passing in the big integer object as another big integer object as a parameter that you want to compare it to. It will return back in primitive int value. Now it returns -1 if the big integer object invoking the method is less than the parameter big integer object. It returns 0 if the big integer object invoking the method is equal to the parameter big integer object. Returns 1 if the big integer object invoking the method isn't greater than the parameter big integer object. So I'll also discuss the toString with the int radix, and the divideAndRemainder methods as well. So let's go ahead and come down here and highlight this source code. And we'll copy this. All right, I'm going to move my browser off screen. I've got a shortcut to the command prompt on my desktop over here, but if you don't, you can create one really fast by right-clicking, selecting New Shortcut, type in CMD next, and finish. It's just that easy. Let's go ahead and open up the command prompt here. Let's type in javac, which is the Java compiler command. You should see all this stuff scroll by here. However, if you receive an error message, watch one of my 3 tutorials on installing and configuring the Java development kit based on your operating system. CLS to clear the screen, CD space /. CD is short for change directory, / tells it to go to the root. I'm going to make a directory with the MD command here called Java, and I already have one, but if you don't, I'll create it for you. I'm going to make another directory here called BigInteger compareTo, and change directories to that folder. And now I'm on a notepad, BigInteger compareTo.java. Create that file, and then we'll just simply paste that source code in here, and let's discuss some of what we've got going on here. So basically, I've got this static void print result method down here. It takes in 2 parameters here. I've got a big integer param1 and a big integer param2. This does nothing more than compare these two. So if param1, which is going to be the first big integer object that we're going to be invoking the method on, compareTo param2 equals -1, right? Now you know how it's saying equals, right? This is testing this equals on the return value from that compareTo over here, right? Which returns back an int value. So these primitive comparison operators, you can't say, like, for example, big integer bi1 is equal to, anyway, I'll demonstrate that. I get off on a tangent here. So we're comparing this to, and if it's equal to -1, then param1 is less than param2, right? And then just a simple else if here, param1 compared to param2 is equal to 0. In other words, the result of compareTo coming back is equal to 0. Then param1 is equal to param2. Otherwise, we're just param1 is greater than param2, because the ultimate result on this last else here would be comparing it to, and the result would actually be +1, as demonstrated over here. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and run through this here, as a matter of fact. And then up here, I'm just invoking the print result method here, passing it a new big integer object with this value, and a new big integer object with this value. And let's just come up here, let's save this, let's compile it and run it, and then we'll step through the code here. So let's clear our screen, javac, and then I just hit tab. We'll go ahead and compile that, Java, hit tab again, back out that class to run it. Okay, so the result of comparing this value to this value, and by the way, this one is these 9s, there's one less shorter than that there. So this number is greater than this number, right? And then, of course, comparing the same thing on the next line here, this number is equal to this, right? And then I added in an extra 9 up here, right? You could see that this one is shorter than this one here, right? And this value is exactly equal to this, right? And now adding in an extra 9 up there, you can see that this value is less than this value. So that's basically how the comparison operator works. It can be a little confusing at first because you're like, you can't actually compare, like, say, you know, I'll just, you know, anyway, we'll go over this later there. Let's talk about the next thing that I want to talk about. So I'm creating this big integer object, or big integer reference here, bi1, to this new big integer object here that holds this giant value here. Okay, and I'm displaying that to the console. And then I'm displaying its length by invoking the toString method, right, with no parameters. And then now we've turned that into a string object here, and now we can use any of the methods from the string class that we desire. And I just happen to choose the length here, which will tell us that, you know, bi1 happens to be 41 digits long, right? Technically 41 characters, since we're invoking the length on the on a string at that point in time. Okay. So this will come into effect down here in just a second here. Next thing I'm doing is I'm creating this BIHEX reference variable of big integer type to a new big integer that is basically hexadecimal 4fs. Now if you remember from my constructor tutorial, that is the equivalent of 65,535, right? And so when we display that to the console, we get 65,535. And that's because I'm invoking the toString method right here. Okay. Now you'll notice up here bi1, right, displayed obviously the decimal value of that, or the base 10 per se, right? If you just put this into the printline method, it implicitly invokes the toString method right here. What is this? Sometimes, oh man, emails rolling through. Gotta love that. Okay. That will implicitly invoke the toString method without the parameter here. Now check this out here. So BIHEX, we know it's equal to 65,536. We also know it originally was FFFFF. So if we want to see this on the displayed to the console as hexadecimal, we can simply pass in the radix value, in other words, the base value there, of 16, right? And then you can see we're back to FFFFF. Okay, so on this next line, what I've done is I've taken bi1, which is this giant value up here, and we'll display that to the console as hexadecimal, right? And we end up with this value here. Decimal is the equivalent of this in hexadecimal. And just for grins and giggles, I threw an octal by passing it the 8 right here, right? So we can use these constructors and these the toString, overloaded toString method to do very cool conversions between base numbers, and especially large base numbers too as well. You can use it for small base numbers, large base numbers, take your pick. Doesn't really much matter there. Okay, now the next thing that I want to discuss here is what I'm going to do is display to the console. Well, actually, I'm going to create this bi result reference variable of big integer type. And I'm going to take bi1, which is our value right up here, right, this value, and I am just going to invoke the divide method from the last tutorial, and I'm dividing it by a new big integer 3. So if we take this number 1 and divide it by 3, obviously, you know, elementary math says that's not going to divide out evenly, right? So we end up with this value right here, 3333333. Pretty much expected on that. And you can see it rounded it down, and we don't end up with an actual accurate result there. So what you want to do is you want to actually create like this reference variable bi array here of big integer array type, right? Now if we use the divide and remainder method of 3 on this, the divide and remainder method always returns an array of exactly 2 elements, right? And the first element will be essentially what you'd get back from divide, and the second element will be the actual remainder right there, right? So you can see The first element exactly equal to what we got by divide, and the second element is the remainder of 1, which is very simple on the math on that. So that's basically how that works. You could actually, if you need decimal formats, you need to use not the big integer class, but the big decimal class. But anyway, that's beyond the scope of this tutorial here. So that pretty much wraps it up for this tutorial there. I think I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to. I just want to, actually one more thing there, right? If, for example, we wanted to add, say, BI1, or compare BI1 to BI2, and we were just to do something silly like, for example, if BI1 is less than or equal to BI hex, right? Then, you know, whatever, right? It's just important to understand that this is a primitive type comparison. It will not work with these objects. You have to use the compareTo. Let's go ahead, let's just plain old save this. We will get an error message when we try to compile this here, right? Bad operand types for binary operator, right? So that's, you just gotta kind of remember that you can't do that. It can get a little confusing because, you know, you can check for stuff here and you have to use, you're just checking the primitive return value, int value on this compare method here, right? And checking for that equal to -1, 0, or in fact 1. So anyway, just drive that point home. I'm just going to go ahead and minimize that, and leave you guys with quick final thoughts. So basically stay tuned for my next tutorial where I will discuss more methods of the big integer class. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do yet, but I'm sure it's going to be fun because I really love this. Really love the big integer class. Anyway, that concludes this tutorial. Thanks for watching.